Celeste Ackerly is the Sustainable Australia's Party president, also running it for them in the Senate in Victoria. She joins us now. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Leo. I appreciate it.
So, look, the Sustainable Australia Party isn't new. It's been around since 2010, off the top of my head.
hmm
Gone through a few name changes. But for people who aren't aware of it, what is the party? What does the party stand
Okay.
for?
So, Sustainable Australia Party, it is we're a community-based sort of party. We sort of rely on a science and evidence-based policy platform. So we develop our policy based on science and evidence. Um, and we are very much an environmental first party. We believe that we are the only party to put the environment first. And I have just in preparation for anyone who is watching, I've brought our flyer, our how to vote card. So this has got our main policies that we're running at the moment in this federal election, which is the environment, obviously number one. We've got basic income for all. We've got stopping overdevelopment, slowing population growth, ending the housing crisis, and a diverse economy. So those are the things that we're running with for this election. But fundamentally, though, we are a community involved sort of party. This is where we are. Democracy is extremely important for us because one of our main priorities this election in particular, and I think going on from now as well, is that we want a sustainable and fair Australia. So we're looking at anti-corruption in government, and overall, that's just it. We just want a sustainable, fair Australia for everyone. Democracy is extremely important. So yeah, that's really what our party is about, and those are the key themes that we're talking about during this election.
Obviously, anti-corruption is a broad one. We saw that focus,
Mhm.
especially last election, with the
Yes.
push for a federal ICAC, which was, put in place with the NACC there. Are you wanting to go further than that?
Look, so our policies, we have quite a few policies on our website that are talking about anti-corruption. The main things that we're typically looking at is a lot to do with, say, tax reform. A lot of it's to do with, for example, the way that our government sort of views, I guess, the market, we look at market monopolization, things like that. We recently scored really high on a tax reform scorecard. I'm not sure if anyone saw that. I think we actually scored number one on that. So our main priorities with anti-corruption is tax reform, it's government, but overall though, it's a huge suite of policies. It's hard to put them all into summary. So anti-corruption is the key term here, but yes, tax reform, etc., government. So just looking into that further and expanding on that, and just ensuring that the democracy of people and their opinions and thoughts is also put into place as well.
You also, I know in that leaflet, that fly, ending the housing crisis, and obviously it's a big
hmm
issue. I know can attest to that as a young person.
Same, I'm a
Who's
renter.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even. Oh, I'm still at the living in parents' house year
Oh,
12.
that's good. I mean, it's good, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
personal.
I'm not even wanting to think about renting, let alone you can forget home
Yeah,
owning. But
yeah,
what are some of the specific policies that you're actually looking for
yep.
to address that? How would you really push for it?
So what we're proposing to do is we're looking again. It's the tax reforms. So abolishing capital. So abolishing, what do you call it? Capital. We're doing 50%. So we're going 50% discount on capital gains tax. So removing that. We're abolishing negative gearing on taxable Australian property. So some of those things will be grandfathered though. So another thing that we're also looking at is foreign ownership of properties. So we're looking to reduce the amount of foreign investment into property. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day, though, we want to ban the further amount of foreign ownership from, if we, for example, were to be able to have the ability to do this kind of thing. Um, but yeah, so moving towards a ban, but sort of working it out and trying to implement a better strategy on that because I think at the moment as well, the government has such high interest in property, and our market it has such a huge portion of that is property. Which obviously it makes it that we don't have a diverse economy. And I think anyone who does look into investment shares and expanding on a portfolio just basing everything on property, especially when it's a human right, is problematic. So we also have pushes, for example, for better renters' rights. It includes obviously people have the freedom to be able to do things in their own home, stricter laws on that so people have more safety, because again, housing is a human right. So our focus on that is to make sure that young people can get into housing a lot easier. We are of the opinion that a lot of the grants and schemes that are made available actually push house prices up. So we would be looking at trying to remove some of those incentives so that the house prices drop and then it's easier for people to get into the housing market. But that goes along with the rest of our policies as well, though, Leo. So all of our policies are interconnected. I'm not sure if you understand or you've heard of systems thinking, for example. Systems thinking is a fantastic view when it comes to sustainability and especially policy. We see everything as holistic and interconnected, and that's one of the things that drew me to Sustainable Australia Party. And being able to use that systems thinking approach, we understand that all policies and all things are connected. Now, if we can implement these types of sometimes it's these types of tax reforms, remove some of these schemes, and make sure that the Australian people are not exploited anymore based on their right to have somewhere to live. We would be hoping that the prices would drop. We know that the prices would drop, and that people like you and I, who you haven't got obviously not renting yet, but I'm as a renter, I pay a lot of rent. I pay a lot of money for rent for my family. Would have the ability to be able to finally get into the housing market. I don't think it's completely necessary that plenty of people have multiple properties and investments. That's fine if they want to. But the issue here is though, is that it's become such a, everyone's investing in property, and it becomes something only privileged people can do. And that's not fair on the majority of, especially young Australians now who are looking, especially voting for the first time. They need to know that their government cares about them. So look, housing is a big one. And I think you'd see across all parties at the moment, it's a big one. But we want to do it sustainably. That's my point on that.
In I guess linking to that, and something that
Mhm.
pops up with your party, and look, I'm sure there'll be comments on this before people even watch it, is that the party is quote unquote racist, anti-immigration, etc.
Yep.
You're not just a candidate, you are the president. So I want to give you a
Yes.
chance to address that.
Yeah,
Is
of
this an
course.
anti-immigration party?
No, we're a pro-migration party. So the thing with this is that we're just asking that there is a conversation around this. We're asking that there is a conversation around looking at migration at a sustainable level. We have no policies around changing refugee intake or anything like that. We're just looking at having a narrative, a conversation, a sensible conversation, and a sustainable conversation around these things. Now, prior to John Howard, we had a fairly sustainable migration intake, and after him, things have changed. It's gotten harder since then. But fundamentally, though, we're just asking for a conversation. We're just asking for it to be sustainable, and it's myself. I'm an Indigenous woman, and I am so proud of Australia. And this conversation around these types of narratives around what kind of party we are, it's not correct. We look for inclusive and respectful conversations, and again, inclusive is the key word here. But all we're asking is just a bit of a conversation around how we can do this sustainably going forward.
Again, in relation to that, obviously this was a party started as a sustainable population. I know that's still, as we've discussed here, right? It's still a focus that's come into effect. I'm interested because we see in relation to, of course, housing, especially a lot of things are coming back to housing.
Yeah.
Talk of where can we put people already, and not so much even more people, just the numbers that we have now, as I said, people like me who aren't even in the renting market yet.
Yeah.
What do you think of proposals that I've seen, kind of floated around about, making up super regional hubs or things like that? What do you kind of make of those proposals? Because I know it's
Mm.
been tried before. I remember like Albury
Yep.
Wodonga, they tried to make that a big thing and that never happened, but it's been tried.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so look, I think I've seen these conversations, and to be honest with you, Leo, look, I come from a very small rural town. That's how I grew up. And I see one of the arguments based on these sort of regional areas is that they're screaming out for infrastructure and work and stuff like that. And in some cases that is correct. But what I do have to say though is growing up in a regional town, everyone managed to find work. And I think as well, another thing to make as well is that if we change the economy to be more diverse, and if we have a lot of those tax reforms that I'm talking about, we'll see, for example, we'd love to see more of a investment in small Australian businesses, Australian owned and operated businesses across and etc. like that. This gives small towns an opportunity to be able to, for example, create their own businesses, to create more work. Now, one of the things I do want to call out is that, look, I did geography at university, and a lot of that was based on, obviously, geographical data. A lot of that's also to do with population and demographics. And one of the most interesting things that I did find, now let's use Tasmania as an example. I am a Taswegian. I do come from Tasmania originally. Um, and for example, when they have sent people to Tasmania to sort of start their process of becoming an Australian citizen, etc., what happens is that they do stay for a couple of years, don't get me wrong, but then they move. So they're moving back to the cities. You've got people that are coming back to say, for example, Sydney, Melbourne, those types of cities because that's where they culturally are. That's where they culturally can find, for example, their culture, their family. There's reunions. They've got their own groups. Regional places, unfortunately, don't have that in most cases. So although there's a talk about regional sort of pushing people out to regions and stuff like that, we have to also take into consideration that there is more opportunity for people to feel culturally safe, to also feel more at home and included in cities that have a developed cultural hub. Does that make sense? So, um, it's a great idea, but we also have an opportunity here to make sure that, first of all, things are inclusive, but then second, that our economy is diversified so that Australians themselves can also broaden the economy in their own regional areas.
Yeah. In this federal election campaign, as we said, you're running for the Senate. I know
Yep.
and anti-corruption we've spoken about. The party put out only a few days ago, I think pretty strong that all federal, state, territory governments and oppositions are corrupt. You can change that with Sustainable Australia. You know as well as I do that you're not trying to form government at this election. You're certainly not
No,
forming
no,
opposition. But
no.
what can maybe I'm sure you'd hope for more, but let's say it's one Sustainable Australia voice on the Senate crossbench
Yeah,
actually do in relation
yeah.
to all these proposals, if it's just that one lone voice, compared to, say, I will use like a party like the Greens, who could very well
Mhm.
remain at 11, or even One
Yep.
Nation, which has a chance of like 5. What could you,
Yep.
as your party, do?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually, and I think this comes back to one of the ideas that we have, and I think it's important for viewers to know if we have no intention of running the country. If we could get one person in, we would hope that we can act as a check and balances, so that we can have those conversations with other parties, so we can bring different things to the table. I think this is one of the I've seen quite a few conversations around lately. I think. The coalition may be talking about how minority parties are problematic. I don't think the data suggests that. I think that if we really reflected, there's been some great things from minority parties. I think Norway's a great example as well. They have such a mixture of government, and they have a better per capita economy than Australia does. Um, so I think it'd be great to just have that checks and balances. Just one person, it's fine. We don't want to run the country, like I said, just to have those conversations, to open those conversations.
Now, the party has a Sustainable Australia. You've run at the state level as well. I think you, for a minor party, pretty well covered in state and territory elections. You've had
Mhm.
some success. I know Clifford Hayes was one of my local upper house members. You've had some relatively small, but some local government campaigns, some successful, some
Mhm.
not. And then, of course, you've been running at various state levels. Again, just
Mhm.
asking because you are the president. How are you feeling about really where the party is 15 years into its existence? Are you feeling like
Yeah.
you're in a position to make change in an elected position?
Look, again, it's the awareness thing, and like I said, this is an awareness campaign. But what I can say to you though, Leo, on Tuesday last week, we had over 37,000 people visit our website. That is the most we have ever seen since the parties started. And each day we are having upwards of 25,000 to 25,000, about 26,000 people max visiting our website. We have never seen numbers like that. I can't say whether or not that changes how, the amount of votes that we're getting. But what I can say though is the majority of those people are looking at our policies page. And that means I think that people are, they're sort of fishing around and they're trying to find out, what the minor parties are doing, what the conversations are. I think people are starting to really sort of tune in on the fact that the majors have made mistakes and there might be other people that they can look at voting for. Um, but yeah, this, like I said again to you, it's an awareness campaign, but it's really great to see people finally having a look. I don't know if it's going to make any difference, but it means that there's something that people are interested in, something there, and I think that's important, especially this time around. Maybe it makes for a better election next time. Maybe it has increased our awareness, but the fact is, of the matter, those people are looking. We have the numbers to prove it.
Is it also an element of trying to find, I guess, some different angles? We mentioned, the party's changed names. I
Yes.
know on the ballot you've changed names quite a few times. Is that,
Yeah.
do you feel like that is going to help get you attention, or do you worry it might just be
Yeah.
another one of those minor party names that's passed down on that long white Senate ballot paper?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Look, we've tried a few different things. Look, I've only been president now for 2 years. So what the party was doing previous to that, it's yeah, the names and name change and stuff that they're not on my radar. I've only just been here for this. But yeah, it might be that, I'm not sure. I can't put words in voters' mouths, but I don't know. People are looking anyway. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Just finally, I know that the party does describe itself as centrist. You're trying to occupy
Mhm.
that space on a wide range of different issues. I think, I
Yeah.
see comments from self-described Sustainable Australia supporters, and yeah, you can tell that they probably don't fit in Labor, Liberal, Greens, for
Yeah.
better or
Yeah.
worse, as some might say.
Yeah.
So there are, more than a few parties that also do kind of say the same thing, that
Hmm.
centrist. We're not like the majors. We're against major party corruption. Make
Hmm.
a difference with your Senate vote. Is there, part of the party that you think, will be able to stand out from the rest here? I know that, getting elected representatives is one thing, but
Yeah.
just, not fit, just like I said with the last question, not just becoming part of the noise of all these different minor parties that have roughly the same rhetoric about we're not like the
Hmm.
majors.
Yeah, that's it. That's also a really good question. You've got some good questions, Leo. So look,
Thank you.
um, the right wing and left wing ideology. Look, we really stand for that. We hope that um, our members and supporters are turning to us because they do want to be more evidence-based. They want to see more science and evidence-based approach to policy. And that's where we get that. And also the respectful and inclusive conversations and the community-based involvement that we see. So we really are proud that we believe that our policies and our values are in the center. And look, what members and that do online, that's hard to control. It's hard for us to do anything about that, to be completely fair. But yeah, well, I've seen some comments of people suggesting that you should be, more of this or more of this to get attention. But the thing is, though, is we're not trying to get attention for the wrong reasons. We're trying to get attention for doing the right thing, for putting environment first, for caring about Australians, caring about the democratic process, caring about all of those things, and also, having those conversations about science. There's a lot of misinformation that gets spread around. I'm sure you've seen it. A lot of misinformation from the coalition, a lot of that kind of happening. Misinformation, mad. And I think a majority it's probably disinformation. I think a lot of it's on purpose. And that's not the kind of thing we want to do. We do not want to get attention by doing things like that. Look, if we get just a little bit of a percent of people seeing us and thinking, no, this is great, they're taking a centered approach, I appreciate that, then we've done our job, right? And we're not going to stray from that. Even if it, even if it was to increase our votes, we're not going to do that. It's not a value of ours. So yeah, I believe we're in the centre.
Well, we look forward to covering the campaign, and we'll follow the party closely in the future, I'm sure. Really appreciate your time. Best luck. Thanks
No,
again.
thank you so much, Leo. Thank you.